is wrong with the food system? You've written a book about this. Can you just give us your diagnosis? What is wrong with our food system? You said earlier there's more hunger in urban areas where there's a production of food. We have agro-processing industry. This country produces a lot of food. The right to food is enshrined in the Constitution. What is wrong with the system? Why are people hungry while we produce so much food?
I think we could summarize it up as saying that we've got our priorities wrong. So instead of prioritizing the vulnerable, the poor, people like the children we've just seen in this program, they are not our priorities in the food system. And that's a disgrace, because South Africa has a progressive constitution. We're meant to be a country that's prioritizing transformation, reducing inequality, and addressing poverty. But our food system is run on the basis that it benefits really wealthier households, and it benefits a few small corporates. Because it's not as if agriculture is benefiting from this either. It's almost impossible to make a living as a small farmer in this country because the prices that the farmers get are so low. This is the main reason why land reform beneficiaries struggle so much, because they get paid a fraction of the retail price of food. But at the same time, hardly anyone can afford to buy food. And the answer lies in market reform. It's not in the production of food, because there's a huge difference between growing more maize in the Eastern Cape and maize meal on the table of a family in Tembisa. There's a market structure between those two. And as the Minister quite correctly said, you know, this is not just her department. The answers don't just lie in food parcels from the Department of Social Development. It's about restructuring the market system that determines how food gets from A to B, and nobody is actually responsible for that.
Minister, how do you respond to that we need to reform the market, the food system? We need to reform the market itself.
Well, it's beyond just the market itself, in my view, and I fully agree with her. Completely, I agree with her. It's more than just the market. It's also about transformation. It's also about accessibility of. Let me make a simple example. If you go to communities who have food gardens and have and can be able to do something around that, which, by the way, as a Department of Social Development, working with our agency, the National Development Agency, is one of the things that we really want to focus on, because we want to implement the national plan for food security. It's about access. Can people access water and easily access water? Can people access seeds and easily access the seeds? Can they access the market if in case they were to produce more than what they are producing? Can they sell within the communities? So it's about us having adopted, in a way, the capitalist mode of doing things lock, stock, and barrel, and then not being able to even have the greater conversation with the market, as she rightfully say, to say, even the market, even the people that own the big farms that produce all these big things, what is their responsibility towards the people? Let's not say what is their responsibility towards government in as far as them paying their taxes and so forth. It's about communities talking to each other and communities being sensitive to each other. Those that are the vulnerable, that have absolutely nothing. You can go and look at the farm workers, for instance. You would take it for granted that the farm workers are working in farms, and therefore the issue of their food security would not only be an issue for government, but it would be an issue also for the farm owners, who would take that into consideration, that while the farm workers come here and work, what is their state of living? What is their environment? How are they supposed to be supported? Because what is being said here about the fact that maybe sometimes food is available, but people are stunted, are malnourished, children are stunted and malnourished. It's all the whole issue of the system. And again, I say, it is an opportune time for us to say, what do we do to deal with the systematic problem? What do we do with what was raised earlier on about the commercialization of food, and when people are unable to access the food?
I think
it's also the nutrition. It's also the nutrition. We as a department, for instance, might have a food parcel, and we are informed by the Department of Health and the Department of Education as to exactly what has to be in that food parcel. Because as a department, our responsibility is that when we reach out our communities through the programs that we had, I mean, you ran a story right now about a child-headed household. As a department, we do have, I think the weakness here is the data and where these people are and what the Department of Social Development and other departments at local level and provincial level, do they have the data so that we can then be able to implement the programs that we have, your social grant, your foster care, even the children that you are talking about. They become our responsibility. We must reach out to them because they are child-headed households. We've got a program for that.
Just on that, Minister, just on that, on the children, do you believe the government and your department is doing enough to protect the children?
No, we have not reached, we are trying our, not reaching everybody. That's why I'm saying to you, 25 years or 26 years of democracy and having a very good constitution does not necessarily translate to us having reached everybody. We are working towards reaching everybody. But again, I say it's a coordinated approach throughout all the departments. When I say to my colleagues, when I say to the Minister of Human Settlement, when people are not getting their houses, it impacts the people that we have to take care of. When the Department of Agriculture does not reach all these people with their food gardens and so forth, it affects these people. When the Minister of Transport is not reaching out to create a conducive environment, all I'm saying, government in an integrated way has to create a conducive environment for people, also for people not to entirely be dependent only on government. Yeah, but those that have to have our services, we must reach out to those.
Yeah, and we know the impact from what we've seen from the researchers. I mean, Tracy mentioned that in those places, in those households where there's hunger and, of course, the poverty exacerbating all aspects of their lives, there's also violence that increases against children, as we've seen. Vishwas, when you hear all of this from your perspective, what you said we need a new system. Before you can tell us what that should look like, in your view, from your program perspective, what is wrong with the current system? We've had issues of wrong priorities, the market reforms, and the minister talking about all kinds of dots that need to be connected where everybody plays a role. What is your view? What's wrong with the system?
Well, this system is premised on generating food inequality. And if you look at the corporate-controlled food system in South Africa, there's high levels of concentration in that food system, whether it's at the level of farming operations. A few large-scale farmers control production. If you look down the value chain, a few supermarkets control the marketing end of the food system. And that has skewed things in major ways. We have an export-orientated food system while our people are starving. It has a massive carbon footprint. And it doesn't feed millions of people and so on. We also have malnourishment, we have obesity, etc. There are various pathologies. And this system has failed us in the context of COVID-19. But at the same time also, the government has also failed us in this context. I mean, if you look at what has happened during COVID-19, we are actually transitioning now to mass starvation. And I want to argue that it's almost 30 million people that are the front lines of the hunger crisis in South Africa. But if you look at government's response, in terms of the food relief efforts that were rolled out, the food parcel program, I mean, essentially, the minister's department reached about 5 million people, okay, from May to September. That came very, very short. I mean, there's been reports on corruption from the Auditor General in this process. The reach definitely has not been wide enough. And, you know, we're seeing horror stories in part of the country, people eating dogs and cats in the Eastern Cape, etc. The other thrust that hasn't worked effectively is the social grants. I mean, the top-ups were very welcome, and we know they've had a mitigation impact. The COVID relief grant was, you know, bureaucratized because it was means tested, and it never reached people effectively to have the big push. But again, I mean, the government's talking about removing some of these top-ups right now. We're not sure where the distress grant is going to go. But the fact of the matter is more could have been done around that kind of relief. And it hasn't been done, and it seems like it's not going to be done. So we are transitioning to mass starvation. And I think this is a very, very serious moment for the country, for policymakers, for politicians, for all of us, actually. And I think it's in this context we have been saying that the government has to democratize its approach to handling this disaster. The Disaster Management Act provides for civil society to come in. And again, we've made this call consistently to work with government at different levels so that we can have a coordinated national response to the situation.
Well, Vishwas, the minister said earlier she's ready, the government is ready to work with everybody. But Minister, social grants fall within your mandate as a social development minister. Are you going to be stopping these extra special disaster relief grants that were added, that 350 rand at the end of this month, when you are hearing this kind of comment that it has helped? And according to Vishwas, I don't know if the number is right, you managed to reach around about 5 million people through this during this tough lockdown period?
We managed to reach 6.8 million people. Added to that was also our working together with the Solidarity Fund. Remember that the Solidarity Fund was also created by President Cyril Ramaphosa. They also had their own NPOs whom they worked with to reach out to these people. When we say 6.8 million, we are talking specifically about those that were reached by the department through SASSA. And then the issue of continuing with the 350, we made our presentations already to Treasury, as well as what we call the MinCombat, because when we were getting feedback from people saying that this 350, it might look something like very little to other people, but it has had the impact in supporting people. We made our submissions to request for a continuation of it after October. But however, I must say here that we are not working in isolation. The overall budget of government affects us. So we are also sensitive to that fact that we need to not look at ourselves only and realize that the budget has to be spread. So we are waiting for a response for that. I don't want to say whether it's going to continue or not continue at the moment, but long before this time, we made our submissions as a department to request through the MinCombat, which has ministers who sit in and look at the entire budget. We made our request for an extension of the 350 because those people who received it have been able to express. And by the way, there's some research also that was done very quickly, not by ourselves, but outside people who have come back to us to say, Minister, here is proof of the fact that the 350 has been...
well, we wish you well. We wish you good luck. Hopefully the Treasury and your colleagues in Cabinet will look upon your request favorably, particularly because I've also seen the reports around that research that says it really assists those 6.8 million people who accessed it. Now, when you hear the words like mass starvation, and you hear the words of 52 million people in the Southern African region, outside of South Africa, in 12 countries where the World Food Programme works, you wonder what the future is going to look like. So when we continue in this today's special, I'm going to ask the World Food Programme, that's Gerald Bourke, when he hears about warnings that we are already in South Africa facing a humanitarian crisis while we produce food, how does that make the rest of the region look? Stay with us.